Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the ACR webinar on our new selling price rounding system. This webinar will take us through the setup process and how to use the price rounding system within ACR. This system has been designed to make setting your selling prices as easy and convenient as possible when making cost changes to products within your product stock file. So, what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering how the price rounding system works, how to set your price rounding rules up, and how the price rounding rules get applied within ACR. So we've got a bit to cover, but we shouldn't take too long today, and it should be well worth our time. So, with the introduction of the new price rounding system, it's now possible to set up rules about how your sell price will be rounded when making cost changes. These rules can be set up in a number of ways to achieve whichever style of price rounding you require. These rules can be set up to have simple rounding rules, such as all prices end in 95 cents. Or you can set up some very complex rules with a large number of conditions used to determine what happens between certain price points to your end selling price. So it is possible to end up having a very complex set of rules or to keep to a very simple set of rules. To start using the price rounding system, all we need to do is set up our rounding rules and then we can start working with them. You don't actually have any other configuration behind the scenes that you need to do before you can start utilizing the system. When price rounding rules are configured, they'll be used when the price change screen is displayed after a cost change or cost adjustment has been performed. And this could either be a manual adjustment or as a result of a stock receipt. So when a cost change occurs, the ACR system will first apply your product's markup or margin to the new cost, and then it'll round the resulting price that your markup or margin gives you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look here now. So the new price rounding maintenance can be located on your default menu under Toolbox, Maintenance, Product, Price Rounding Maintenance. In the price rounding maintenance screen, we can see the fields that allow us to set up the rules for our price rounding. The rules that are set can be as simple or as complex as your requirements need. And you can set up a single simple rule that will apply to all your prices or a set of rules that apply to different price ranges. So what I'll do, I just want to go through the available fields first. So you've got your price inclusive from and price inclusive to. So the price rounding is done on the inclusive of GST sale price. For a product that has no GST applicable, it's still done to the price that is seen in the price inclusive of GST column in your product file. The trunk to hold dollar tick box, this allows for rounding rules that require the price to first have the cents dropped off before the rounding is applied. We'll actually be using some examples of this tick box in this webinar, so you will get to see how it actually works. Next, we have type, and there's two options here, round to and replace with. They sound similar, but I'll explain the difference. Round to, this will set the price to be rounded to a number that is divisible by the value entered in the amount field. For example, if you entered 0.05 in the amount field, what we'll end up with is values that are divisible by 0.5. So we'd end up with prices ending in things like 25 cents or 40 cents or 35 cents. However, if we enter in 55, we'd end up with numbers that are divisible by that. So rounding would end up with things like, we'd end up with prices like it'd round up to $1.10 or round up to $1.65. prices that are divisible by 55 cents. Replace with, however, this will replace the last number in the price with the value set in the dollar and cents field. For example, if we set a price of 95 cents and leave the dollar blank, it'll set it so that you'll have prices that end in 95 cents. So you'd end up with prices like $4.95 or $9.95 if you'd entered 4 and 9 in the dollars and 95 cents in the cents field. Direction. This sets where the pricing will go, and those options are next, previous, and nearest. So next will round the price up to the next configured value. So this will also mean that it will set the price inc to as the highest possible price to round to. Selecting previous means it'll always round down, and it will set the price inc from as the lowest possible price to round to. And nearest will look for what is nearer, the price below or the price above, and round to that. It will also set the price inc from as the lowest and the price inc to as the highest. Now, just as a note, the direction field set either the high, low, or both possible prices based on which direction is set. This is done to remove the chance of having a gap when you set a price. So basically, it's designed so that you don't end up doing, like, you can't end up with a price that is going to round down to a price that's outside of the configured options or round up to a price outside of the configured options. So it will always set the highest or lowest limit depending on what has been selected. Now, as we've seen, if you select the round to, the amount field is available. This is where you enter the value that the rounding will calculate on. It'll end up producing a set of prices that are divisible by the number that is in the amount field. If we are using replace with, the dollar field is available, and this is where you determine what happens to the dollars in a price. So, for example, if we entered 0 in here and we'd entered in $10 as our price that we were going to round, if we'd entered in $11 as our price we wanted to round and we told it to round down to previous, it would round down to $10 because it'll look at the first value of the dollar in the dollars and replace it with 0. Same as if we put 5 in here and we put $11, selected next, put $11 as our example, it would replace 11 with 15 because it'll replace that last one with a 5 instead of the 0 like we had previously. The cents work the same. You don't need to enter a decimal point here, you just enter the amount of cents you want. And what this will do is this will then replace the cents. So if you haven't got anything in dollar and you've put 95, it will just straight replace whatever cents come out in the price after the markup or margin is applied and replace that with 95. The price rounding set area, this will display up to the first 50 available rounding options. This uses the price rule set to determine what possible prices are achievable for rounding. If more than 50 possible rounding points exist, it'll only show you the first 50. This is designed as a bit of a sanity check to have a quick look and determine whether you're happy that it's going to round to prices that you want it to, or whether there's something that's been included that you maybe didn't want and allow you to fix that before you leave this screen. You can actually test the price rounding rules you've set up using the checking tool at the bottom here. you simply enter the price before rounding. You wish to check, press process. It'll display the price that will be rounded, and then it'll display the actual rounded price. This comes into effect specifically when we're using trunk to whole, and we will use that in a moment. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do our first example, and we're going to use the round to feature. We'll first set up a price rounding rule that'll cover all prices from 1 cent to $200. We'll leave the trunk to whole dollar off, set the type to rounding and direction to next. So what we're going to do here, we're going to set the 1 cent to $200, leave that, set round to next, and in the amount we're going to put 0.5. This is going to achieve having the sell price round to a value that's divisible by 0.5. So what we can see here is if we put in a sell price of 25.8, hit process, we're going to get $25.10 as our rounded price. Now we can put in pretty much any price we want here up to 200 to see what it's going to result in. So 185.46, process 185.50. So this is a way of being able to check specifically what a price will result in. But as mentioned, here we'll display the first 50 possible results to be able to have a look at. So we've had a look here at a simple one. We're going to go to example 2. We can now see that the price rounding, being the fact that the price will round to a number divisible by the value entered in the amount field, a bit clearer. So by now we're going to change this rule, and we're going to change it, instead of 0.05, we're going to put it at $1.75. So what we'll see here is that we've got, again, a much different set of values showing. So if we again use our 25.08 in the price checker and we hit result, what we're going to see is we're going to see a value of 26.25. We return this because 26.25 is divisible by $1.75. So that's the round to feature there. Nice and simple, not too difficult. The next option we're going to go with is, in our next example, we're going to start looking at the replace. So to do this, we can simply set 0.01, and this time we're going to go up to 199.95. We're going to still leave the trunk to whole turned off. We're going to set it to replace with, though. We're going to leave the direction as next. This time, however, what we're going to do is we're going to round to 25, 50, 75, and 95 cents. So we're not going to worry about what we're doing with the dollar. We're going to replace the cents with the next either 25, 50, 75, or 95. So to do that, we enter 20, 50, 75, 95. Nice and simple. And what we'll see here is that we've got 20, 50, 75, 95. $1.20, $1.50, $1.75, $1.95. All of those 4 cent options available right up to $109.95. So we'll now do a quick test on that, just so that we can see a result. We're going to enter 55.80 this time as our price. When we hit process, we'll now see that the 55.80 has rounded up to the next available, which is 95 cents. So it's rounded up to 55.95. Now, we can do a little example here, and we can change this direction from next to nearest. And we'll see a difference in the price achieved when we apply it this time. We're going to do the same. We're going to do the 55.80 again. We'll hit process, and this time, instead of getting 55.95, we got 55.75, because 55.80 is closer to 75 than it is 95. Hence, direction nearest, it's determined to round down. If we'd set this to previous, we'll achieve the same result because it had just rounded down previously anyway. Okay, so we've had a look at the round 2. We've done a very simple replace option, and this is a valid way of rounding, and a lot of people, when they were talking to us about this, were looking for this style of rounding. Now, we do have a more complex style of rounding that we're going to look at now, and this is just where we're going to have multiple sets of rules depending on what price point. So we can set up a more complex set of pricing rules that will treat different price ranges with different rules. As an example, we can see the following set of rules we're going to set up are relatively quick to set up once you know what you want to set up. This set of rules has 6 pricing ranges set up in it that are going to cover prices from 1 cent all the way up to $99,999.99. So it's basically covering all of your potential price ranges. So we're going to set up the first 2, and we're going to be able to see that these will cover prices up to $9.95. We're not going to be doing anything with the dollars, but they're going to have a number of different options available with the cents. So we're going to leave that at 0.01 cents. We're going to take this up to 99 cents. Leave it with replace and next. And this time we're going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 99. So all I'm doing here is when I finish one, I'm just pressing enter, and it'll automatically make available the next field to type in. So that's our first rule, that anything below $1, we want to round it up to the next point here. So we're then going to add a price range, and this time we're going to take it from $1 to $9.95. Now the system does do a check to make sure that you don't have overlapping prices, because each range must have a unique price range in it. You can't have any overlap. However, it is possible to end up with a gap if you're not careful and you don't do it methodically. So we're going to keep with the replace with and the next. This time, for our prices between $1 and $9.95, we're going to round them to 25, 50, 75, and 95. Right. So for the next 2 rules, they're going to cover the prices between $9.96 and $99.95. And this is going to round dollars. This is going to replace dollars and cents. They do this by replacing the value in the individual dollar column and in the cents column with the next configured combination. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a price in. Now at the end of the dollars, if you press enter again, it'll actually move you up to the cents. Here we're going to go for $29.96 and $99.95. Replace with, we're going to do 4 and 9 and 95. All right. So what we're going to see here is, in this set, that'll allow you to round to it'll replace with prices of $4.95 or $9.95. So we can now set up some, and we're going to actually use the trunk to hold dollar feature for the last 2. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set up another one for $99.96 to $199. $199.99. This time we're going to do the truncate and replace with. We're going to use 5 and 9. Now when doing this, it is important to add the 00 with the trunk to whole dollar, because as you can see here at the moment, it's going to look to round to every cent until we press enter on this, and it'll now look to round to only the whole dollars. So we can now chuck in our last one. We'll round, replace with. This time we're just going to go for 9 and 00 cents. So to test these, what we're going to do, we can actually have a bit of a look at some prices here and actually see what's going to happen. So we can come down here and we can do $55.80 and process, and we can see it's going to give us $59.95. So if we have a look up here, we can see that it's going to be this set of prices. So we put $55.80. It's been told to replace with next. So $9.95, and we can see here that the next price after $55.80 is $59.95. So it's returned us the price we would expect. Now in these larger ranges, what we can do a price. Let's have a look at the price of $209.99 and process. This is where we can see the truncate to whole dollar come into effect. With the results, we could see that it's actually truncated the 99 cents off initially and then looked to round to the next $9. So we've ended up with $209. Now, if we were to take the truncate to whole dollar off and type that same price in, you'll see that it's now rounding $209.99 and going to replace it with, round it up to the next 900, which is $219. So as you can see here, that trunk to whole dollar has had a $10 effect on the final price. So if you wanted to say $209.99, basically you want that to just go to $209. Then you need to have the trunk to whole dollar turned on and the 00 in the cents. And that'll go to 209. With it, the trunk to whole dollar turned off, $209.99 is returning us a price of $219. So we're going to turn it back on. Now, once you've entered all your rules, as you've seen, I've not been pressing the save button at this point. The price checking feature is available at any point in time without having saved. So as you're working through, you can do your example prices without a concern about having to type in and make sure or keep saving it to be able to do your checks. But it is important that once you've completed it, you do save it to get it locked in. So what we're going to have a look at now is we're going to actually have a look at the price rounding rules and how they actually get applied. So for this, we're going to need to actually trigger a cost change within the system. So I'm going to quit out of this. I'm going to go to our cost adjustment utility. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm doing it just by a manual cost adjustment. This would be the same if you had done it, if a price had come up from the auto file, if you'd had a price change at stock receipting. The same will affect. So what we'll do, we'll bring up a product and we're going to do a price change. I'm going to change the price to $15, the cost, sorry, we're going to do a cost change. I'm going to change the cost to $15.80. So when I trigger that, we've now got our maintain price, maintain margin, and rounded margin as options. So if I say maintain price, now here we're looking at price 2, 3, and 4. Maintain price, we can see that maintain price is going to keep our inclusive price the same, but it's going to affect our margin. So here, for instance, we're going from 62.73% down to 56.38%. If we did a maintain margin, what we'll notice is our price inc changes, but our margin stays the same. or markup if you're that way configured. If we do round margin, what we're going to notice is that our price has changed and applied our pricing rule, so it's gone to $49.95, and our margin has changed, or markup. This is a concept called margin creep. This is where your rounded price and your margin or markup both increase. If this happens a number of times in quick succession or in succession without a review or a correction, you can find that your margin will continually keep creeping, or margin or markup will creep up higher and higher, which could end up pushing your sell price into an uncompetitive range. So you do need to make sure that you monitor the marginal markup if you're implementing this, to make sure that you don't end up with a snowball effect and end up with margin creep that is beyond what you were expecting. Now, you can monitor this, obviously, in this screen here, where you can see what margin you had, what your new margin will be, but it will only show you your current margin and what your new margin will be. You can't see previous margins in here. So just to recap, if you select maintain price, your inclusive price will stay the same, your margin or markup will change. If you select maintain margin, your margin or markup will stay the same, your price will change. If you select rounded margin, your price and margin or markup will change. There is obviously occasional exceptions where you may end up with a price that is exactly what the rounded price will be, but barring those, you will get an effect of price and margin or markup changing. So once we're happy with which one we want, we can just click on OK, and that will apply the price change the same as it would any other time. So we're going to have a look at another product here, and we're going to do a cost change for this to $150. So what we can see here again is with the maintain margin, our margins have stayed the same. However, our prices have changed. Maintain price, our prices have stayed the same, but our margins have changed. With rounded margin, we now have prices that end in nice 309.00, 299, but our margins have slightly changed. So here at the moment, we'd end up with like 306.81 and 296.92. Now we're ending with 309.00 and 299.00. So when we're happy with that, we can just click on OK, and that's applied it for us. So that is applying and using the price rounding system. Now, there is one configuration that has been added in the ordering configuration. In your price change screen to default to, where it previously only had maintain prices, maintain margins, you do now have the rounded margins as an option to set your default to. So just to recap with some helpful hints, you can set which menu option the price change screen defaults to, as we just saw. You do need to watch out for margin creep or markup creep when you're using the price rounding. Now, how much that is going to affect you will be determined by yourself, but it is something just to be mindful of when you are looking to implement this, and just to keep in mind. And finally, I highly recommend planning out, having it structured on a bit of paper or in a spreadsheet, how you want your price rounding to work before you start setting it up. The more defined you have your set of rules, the quicker and easier it will be to set them up and get them working for you. But as you saw in this example today, as soon as you get them set up and keyed in, you can start using them. So just to finish this up, thank you very much for joining us. If you have any further questions or would like any more information about the price rounding system, please feel free to contact ACR or one of the trainers here. We're always happy to help, and we'd be more than happy to take you through anything further. Of course, if you have any other questions about the ACR system, please feel free to contact the training team. Otherwise, if you've got a general question, you may want to talk to your account manager, Matt Knipe, who's always happy to have a chat to anybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and hope you have a great afternoon.